What can you do to get better at advertising? ACOS, keywords, bidding, discovery, research, data gathering, all kinds of things I'm going to talk about today on the My Amazon Guy podcast. My name is Stephen Pope, and I am the founder of My Amazon Guy. So as an agency, we are continually trying to improve our own internal processes. We want to get better at advertising, better at the core functions that make selling on Amazon profitable for our clients. And you as an Amazon seller listening to this, I'm going to give you a series of questions today to think of and mull over to spark some ideas on what you could be doing more on your advertising efforts, on your Amazon account, to see if we can spark a question that will make some improvements. So COVID-19 or coronavirus absolutely still impacting how you should think about advertising right now. So we'll briefly touch base on that. So specifically, if you are predominantly an FBA seller today and you have run out of stock or you can't ship back in, you probably are focused on getting merchant fulfilled listings up or alternative shipping methods in place. And one of the fundamental biggest mistakes that a lot of people might make is they forget to add merchant fulfilled listings into their advertising. So that's the question. That's the first question I have on my list is every SKU on your catalog currently in advertising? Because if it's not, that would be the first starting point to fix your advertising and make some improvements. Now, let's say you got 1,000 products in your catalog. Clearly, you're not going to advertise all 1,000, but do you have your top 80% of your revenue covered? And if you've made any new SKUs on the account, the ads do not automatically transfer over. Advertising is done at the SKU level, not the ASIN level. And for those that are asking what's the difference, an ASIN is the catalog detail page, and you can have unlimited SKUs that link to that ASIN. And you might have a SKU for a different fulfillment method. Maybe you've got one for merchant fulfilled. Maybe you have one for FBA. Generally speaking, you probably don't need more than 2 SKUs per ASIN. But maybe you had to create a duplicate SKU to solve a data issue. That's a very common reason. So that is the first question: is every product currently being advertised appropriately? And that's a fundamental question that you'd be surprised might be missed on occasion. So that's the first one. The second is, are there any stockout concerns? Because if there is, that could impact how much you're going to want to be spending on ads right now. So specifically, if you know you're going to stock out in 7 days from now and you can't restock it, you probably should pause your advertising on that SKU almost entirely. You're going to want to slow down the sales effort, recover as much margin, perhaps raise your prices on it. Although if you raise more than 10%, Amazon might accuse you of price gouging, which in some regards is a little silly, because if you're trying to prevent a stock out, you can get penalized for stocking out by Amazon. So if they don't allow you to raise your prices, that's kind of a double-edged sword there. But it is what it is. So try and prevent those stockouts right now, which are a big topic due to COVID-19. And if you can switch over from FBA to MFN to avoid a stockout, you absolutely should. Now, we did that for dozens of clients, and we found out that a lot of clients' margins simply don't work with merchant fulfilled. Maybe their item costs 2 or 3x as much as it costs to ship merchant fulfilled as it did with FBA. And so they were between a rock and a hard place, and we had to kind of flip back to FBA so margins didn't check out on MFN. But you may want to pause advertising on select SKUs to avoid stockouts. Keep them in stock as long as possible. Raise your prices. So make sure all products are advertised and make sure they're going to be in stock, because if they're not in stock, you might want to pause your advertising. All right, next question. And by the way, we came up with this list of questions as a group on a sync that I do with my agency. On a near daily basis, we sync up and just talk about what we're observing, because we've got access to more than 60 active clients right now, and we see trends and we think about them, and so we're trying to take our advertising game to the next level. And there's all kinds of tricks and tips and hacks out there, but sometimes implementing them, it's the difference between understanding theory and understanding the practical application of said theory. All right, so next question. are the key products in the account that deal 80% of the sales, have they been focused with the advertising efforts? So do they have all the key campaigns in place? There's a lot of different campaign structures today, very different than it was, say, a year ago, right? You've got sponsored products, which is your bread and butter, but inside of sponsored products, there's all kinds of new ways to target. On new campaigns, you should be building fixed bid campaigns because there's no historical data instead of doing bid up and down. You may have a reason to do bid adjustments for top of search versus trying to show up on a detail page. Those are questions you should ask yourself. Do I want to be at the top of search, pay a premium to do so on my top product for top keywords? Most likely, yes. Not for the whole catalog, but on that couple of key products that you have, you want to defend that territory to the death, make it so the competitors can never enter the market space and manage it that way. Do you have offensive campaigns in place where you're targeting your competitor product ASINs? And that's a very specific segmented type of campaign. Are you advertising in search for your competitor brand names? Very easy to set up that campaign. Probably one of the easiest campaigns to set up and manage. You literally just make a campaign with your top products and target competitor brand names. And some of the lowest ACOS comes in off that. Yes, you can do that. That's totally white hat, by the way. No black or gray hat tactics will be discussed in this podcast. Nor do we use that in any, we only use white hat at My Amazon Guy. Just put it that way. So if you hear it on today's podcast, it's totally kosher with Amazon policy to advertise on competitor names. You just can't use a trademark term in your listing. That's where you'll get in trouble. So don't put your competitor names in your listing unless you can claim it's fair use in some official study or some kind. But for the most part, you'll get a trademark takedown at some point in the future. It's not worth it. Defensive campaigns. This is a very lesser known strategy. We don't use this on every account. We use it selectively when we think it makes sense. But basically, that's when you advertise on your own products. And you do this because there's a product row of sponsored products within Amazon's detail page. And instead of seeing competitors' products, you see your own there. It does not work in every category. Beauty is probably the one category we use it frequently in, because somebody who buys mascara is going to buy your face makeup or your wash or whatever else. And although the A+ content can have a product grid where you link between things, sometimes it makes more sense to also advertise a product row. So defensive campaigns. There's now sponsored brands or headline ads. These are higher in the funnel. They have a lower propensity to convert people, more curiosity clicks, higher in the funnel, so brand awareness. I do those types of campaigns very, very sparingly, but there are some new advertising techniques. One is specifically called a custom mobile image ad. We have done extensive rollout on that in the past 7 days. It's a brand new feature and allows you to advertise something on a mobile phone and take up half the screen. It's incredibly large for the amount of retail space that you get. And so that's definitely one I would roll out in a heartbeat on your best sellers because this is the most real estate you could ever advertise on Amazon ever before, and it replaces kind of some bulky, not so attractive headline ads. One of the biggest questions we get on headline ads or sponsored brands is where should you land them? For the most part, we choose to not land them on the brand store page. We instead land them on a product search list page, and that's because the stores don't convert very well. Stores are built really well for brand awareness. They're not built for landing pages. Now, there are exceptions to that. If you really segment out your store very well, you could have a sub page that's built like a landing page. But for the most part, we don't think they convert as well and recommend just going to a search landing page. Finally, there's category targeting and product targeting. So category targeting, you advertise against, so let's say you sell a wine glass like I do for Momster, my side hustle brand where I test things, then you could target anybody buying a wine glass. And you could put a 15-cent bid in place, and you'd be surprised how much traffic you get, low cost, and it does convert with an appropriate ACOS. So getting category targeting in place is also very beneficial. And finally, the newest ad format type is called product display. Technically, this real estate used to exist on Vendor Central, but it's brand new to Seller Central. And we find it to be hit or miss. So it's not necessarily going to guarantee to work, but it's additional real estate you can advertise on. And we'd recommend checking it out. So do you have all of the best products in ads? And do you have all of the ad targeting types in place? Next question, are the ads segmented enough? So sometimes if you got a large catalog especially, you need a lot more segmentation. Should you have multiple manual non-brand keyword campaigns? Most likely, yes. Especially if you got more than 8 products in the catalog or different, the more drastically different your products are and different categories you are, the more segmentation is going to be required, right? So like if your entire catalog can be advertising on the same keywords, then you don't need that segmentation. But if you're selling a mallet and you're selling a widget and you're selling a beauty cream, those are clearly very, very different types of keywords you're going to be hitting, and each one of those products needs its own segmented campaigns and multiple campaigns for different purposes. We often will segment out brand campaigns from non-brand keywords because the ACOS is always better on brand because the higher intent for purchase is on brand keywords. And we like to know how we're really doing in the non-brand keywords especially, and we don't like to hide behind the brand search terms. That's probably one of the biggest things that most agencies don't talk about is they like to rope in brand and non-brand keywords together instead of just owning the different ACOS. But in my opinion, it's better to segment those out. You should know how you're doing on non-brand keywords. And so what do I mean by non-brand keywords? I'm talking about when you search for a brand name like Monster, that's a brand keyword. But if you search for a funny wine glass, that's a non-brand keyword. And those should be segmented from each other because one is going to perform way better than the other. The brand term will perform better. Next question, are your campaigns running out of budget? May seem like a simple one, but man, if your campaigns are running out of budget, you need to do one of two things. Raise your campaign budgets or lower your bids so your ads create more clicks for that same budget. So you may need to create some dedicated campaigns with your best keywords in them so that those never ever run out of budget. We have a lot of different client desires on how to do advertising. So we have some clients that they're rigid and they want, do not spend a penny more than $2,000 a month on ads or whatever it might be. We have other clients that are like, sky's the limit, stay under 20% ACOS. It's a lot easier to manage the latter than the former because rigid budgets is a lot harder to predict results and harder to predict how to make your bid adjustments, but is totally doable. You can create portfolios. If you don't know what a portfolio is, you probably don't need one. But the more campaigns you have on the account, the more likelihood a portfolio can help you organize yourself. And if you're running out of budget on some campaigns, you probably need to segment more or raise budgets. Probably both. So that's something to check out. One of the questions that we posed as a group today, we decided that most likely is not something we want to act on, but a lot of people that advertise on Amazon, they like to break out their campaigns into broad, phrase, and exact match campaigns. I think that that's a really good beginner technique, but I don't think it's something that's necessary or scalable or that's going to you're not going to get better performance from that technique, in my opinion. In some instances, you might see broad outperform exact and phrase. So I don't see a point in segmenting it in that format. What I would say it's better to segment it in best and make sure your best keywords that always perform have dedicated budget, right? And so in some instances, that might mean 3 broad, 2 phrase, and 10 different exact keywords. So, segmenting it out by exact, phrase, and broad doesn't necessarily correlate to where should you spend your best money in the best places. So instead, I recommend segmenting by best keywords, which could be any kind of combination of exact, phrase, and broad. But it's great beginner's technique. So if you're listening to this and you've spent less than $1,000 in ads to your name, when you first build out your ads, exact, phrase, and broad campaigns, definitely better than not doing it that way. So don't run out of budget And if you need to, go ask your team if we should increase budget or get the approvals you need to make that happen at your own company. New listings. Have you got your new SKUs with dedicated ad budget and dedicated campaign structure? In the first 2 weeks of a product launching, there's a honeymoon period. And if you don't get as much maximized sale traction during that time period, you're doing it wrong. You should spend 3 or 4x what you're comfortable doing normally on a new product in the first 2 to 4 weeks. Because every sale you get in ads will lead to 3 organic sales, especially during that time period. You're going to gain a lot of new keyword rankings. So, I'm a marketer. I'm biased. I think you should always be advertising. But I think especially this is important for new listings. New listings should have a lot of attention when it comes to traffic generation and conversion elements. Make sure those new listings have got some reviews on them. Sign up for the early reviewer program. Get Vine in place. Give away some product and bum a couple reviews from friends if you have to, within reason. And then make sure you got A+ content in place. If you don't have A+ content today, go out and hire a designer that does that. That is a service My Amazon Guy offers. Go to myamazonguy.com, click on our services. We sell A+ content for $500. It's one of the best services that we offer for a low cost. And we really can't be beat on that service. Like, nobody can beat My Amazon Guy in A+ content. We are that good at it. People forget to put keywords behind the alt text of photos. They don't maximize the keyword language. We do all of those things, and we've got good design aesthetics. Like, we've got good designers in-house and technicians. And most people get the design right. They don't get the technicians part correct. The technical elements of A+ design, cannot emphasize that enough. But if you don't have brand registry, you need to get that in place first, because brand registry allows certain types of advertisements. You can't get access to sponsored display or sponsored brands without brand registries. So make sure all new listings are in ads, and make sure you've got all the converting elements in place so that when you do run those ads, they're going to convert. Do you have all the new ad types set up? I mentioned them on the call already. Brand custom image, display product targeting. It seems like Amazon is rolling out new features every other week within the ecosystem, and you need to have your ear to the ground and be checking those sections, or you need to pay somebody to do that on your behalf, right? If you've never had a consultant look at your ad setup, it is absolutely worth hiring somebody to go in and take a gander or do an audit and give you some recommendations. It will pay for itself within 30 days, almost guaranteed, unless you're a master at it already. But even masters at advertising, they're going to miss stuff, or they're not going to be seeing the trends that they might if they're only managing one account, right? You're going to miss the trends on what happens to the category or what happens to other accounts. So make sure you've got all the new ads up to date and set them up and test them. Most of the new ad techniques are typically going to flop, right? So every 3 ad techniques that get rolled out, one's going to do great, one's going to do okay, and one's going to flop. And sometimes it surprises me that some work on some clients and some don't on others, right? So like offensive product targeting, we generally, only like 20% of our clients do well on that ad type. But when it does work, it works really freaking well. So like we have a client in lighting, and their best campaigns are offensively targeting other lighting fixtures. And I would not have predicted that. So be sure to test all of these things. Speaking of testing, have you run any A/B testing? And true A/B testing, you have everything equal and test one different element. If you start a new campaign to test against the old campaign will almost always win, and that's because of the past data on the old campaign. So you're better off A/B testing at the ad group level within the same campaign, because the data will have more likelihood to be fairer between the two elements. So what are some things you could A/B test? Well, if you're talking sponsored brands, you can A/B test creative, text, in the headline ad, location of where you land them, and bids. You could even A/B test bids. On sponsored products, you could A/B test bid functionality types, right? So up and down versus down only, or fixed bid. You could test which bid function works the best for you. You could also test top of search versus product page, right? Those are two different real estate locations. Search typically performs best, but not always. So you could do all the same keywords, but test bid modifiers against each other and see what performs best. Not a whole lot you can A/B test on sponsored products. Usually it's related to bid functionality because there's no creative A/B testing. Like you can't test blue versus red, for example. There are no good detail page A/B testing tools outside of the Amazon ecosystem. Within the Amazon ecosystem, A+ Content just rolled out with a new A/B testing function for A+ content and enhanced brand content. And that is absolutely something I recommend testing. So a little off topic for ads, but you should be A/B testing your A+ content as well. And something you could A/B test, you could test long text versus short text, more images versus less images. You could test the arrangement of the modules. Maybe the product grade being higher with comparison of products is better for your products because it leads to higher AOV. Maybe having a lifestyle image performs better, or maybe having a different type of lifestyle image performs better, or a close-up. Maybe having a close-up of a face does better. So those are all kinds of things you can A/B test on A+ contents, and it's very, very product specific. So a lot of trends that we've seen don't necessarily correlate across categories. Have you tested? So next question. Ad placement, percentage adjusted, should it be in place, right? So like on the top 3 or 5 keywords that are most important and perform well, maybe creating a new campaign for the best keywords with a percentage bid modifier on top of search with say 100% bid up might be good play for you. Not something I would do on every keyword ever, but when you're trying to defend that territory, bidding up on some of those top keywords might be important. Next question, do you have enough display category targeting set up? So you could target multiple categories with your products. Even unrelated category types could also be targeted. So if you're selling camping supplies, right? Let's say you sell a sleeping bag. Maybe you should be targeting other prepper categories right now. Maybe you should be targeting gold and silver coins, right? Silver stackers like to be a prepper. So targeting those categories because you'll get those cursory sales. Hey man, I'm prepping for the end of world, so I need to make sure I have both a shelter and some money to carry with me, or a monetary exchange of some kind in currency if the U.S. dollar fails. Obviously prepping is a giant rabbit hole to go down. But the point I'm trying to make with that analogy is that there could be some unusual category targeting that you haven't thought of doing that may be worth doing. So do you have enough category targeting in place? Are the CPCs in a good place? CPC is an acronym for cost per click. Is your average cost per click under $1? Is it above $3? Well, it depends on your category. Things that are high in clicks are typically beauty category, technology products, and consumables such as men's supplements. Those are typically the highest ACOS categories. So how do you compare against the industry averages? Have you checked and asked that question? Have you asked 2 or 3 of your competitors what their average ACOS is or their average CPCs? Celix and other tools out there do have some charts where they do express like, here's the average in each category. That's definitely worth checking out. How is your ACOS? Are you advertising to a place where you're not leaving sales on the table? What do I mean by that? Is if you're not allowing your ACOS to go high enough, which people generally don't like high ACOS, it means that you're leaving sales on the table. Generally speaking, you should allow your advertising to go break even. And the reason for that is for every 3 advertising sales you make, for every advertising sale you make, you're going to get 3 organic. So if you break even on advertising, that's going to allow your organic keyword rankings to greatly improve. So it's really important to allow for that. And having a high ACOS may not necessarily be a bad thing if it allows you to convert organically. But at bare minimum, I would at least go break even on ACOS. Generally speaking, I think 10% of your gross sales should be put back into ads to allow for growth of the account. If you want to maintain your account, do 7% of gross sales. Anything less than that, you're going to see attrition or you're going to shrink the account. Do you have enough offensive ASIN targeting in place, right? So Do you have negations in place? Do you have enough negative keywords that have been optimized into the account? Negative keywords is the most missed, easiest thing to do because you can go into the search term report and look up bad performing keywords. Maybe you sell an adult product and keywords like baby are showing up. And you could negate the word baby and save 3% ACOS just by negating that. Very easy technique to do. One of the fastest things you can do today to improve your ACOS performance is go add negative keywords. And especially add them as a phrase match, not necessarily as an exact, because phrase match negatives will allow iterations that for anything that shows up for said baby keyword on that adult product. So we talked about portfolios, archiving. Okay, so is your campaign structure clean? Have you archived all of your bad campaigns or paused campaigns that you never plan to resurface? I'd say this is probably a lower priority, which is kind of why it's at the bottom of my list here. But sometimes it makes sense to take a half hour and go clean up your structure, because you might go back and review and say, hey, we used to test this, but we probably should retest that. And you might see something that you used to do that you should do again. Finally, do you have you done some really big data mining? So this is a really technical one to do, but you can go download a bulk update file, go into your advertising campaign structure and go to reports and download the checkbox for placement data on each campaign, hit the spreadsheet for download, and go data mine this thing. Usually when you find on YouTube those guys with their hacks or their things to do to improve ads immediately, they're usually data mining techniques that are used to make that happen, or macros based on downloading those template sheets. I'm not saying there's any specific hack that works well. Generally, they're very isolated techniques. But if you just go simply download a bunch of data, you're going to find something. I guarantee it. I can't predict what you're going to find. You might find something at the macro level where you're like, oh, we need to do more of this type of strategy. Or you might find something at the micro level where you're like, man, this one ASIN is super underperforming. What can we do about that? So go data mine that tool. I would say that out of 100 people I've talked to that do advertising, maybe 3 people of that 100 have ever downloaded that template file. So it's a very rare thing to do. But if you want to get exceptional in ad management, that's definitely something you need to do. So finally, a plug for My Amazon Guy. We are exceptional advertising managers. And if you have listened to this full podcast, hopefully we've proven that to you. And if you don't have My Amazon Guy on your payroll today, and you want us to help you manage your advertising, go to myamazonguy.com today and request a quote from us. We will go in there and find out how we think we can do and improve your advertising, and we'll send you lots of updates on how we're making changes. We track our bids, we track our changes, we make improvements on your account, and you're going to be able to basically look at our high level roll up report. And it's going to show in continual improvement in session counts, clicks, ACOS, and overall revenue. Everything we do boils down to 2 things: improve traffic and improve conversion rate. And advertising is very much the art and the science of making the right product show up to the right person at the right time for the right price. And we exemplify that at My Amazon Guy. So if you haven't decided to hire a consultant today, it's not as expensive as you might think. And we pay for ourselves by day 60, day 90 on average. Go hire My Amazon Guy today. My name again was Stephen Pope. I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy. Thank you for listening to our advertising podcast.